This is the NUX Solid Studio. It's an impulse response and a power amp simulation pedal, but how solid is it? Let's find out. Well, hello there, my name is Vladimir, welcome to my home studio. The people at NUX saw the Cerberus multi-effects thing demo I did a couple of months ago. They seemed to like it, and they got in touch with me and asked, hey, we have these new things coming up, would you like to check them out? And obviously I said yes, and one of those things was the Solid Studio. It's an impulse response / power amp simulator. And I have to say that it's a really clever thing. Like, there's so many kind of ways you can use it. And I'll try to go through all of them and demonstrate as many of them as I can. Let's start by taking a look at the kind of front panel. There's a switch for you to engage and disengage the power amp section. You can engage and disengage the cab / mic section. Then there's a selector for all of these microphones. There's a bunch of them. Let me turn just a bit so you can see. There's the dynamic 421, there's the SM57, and bunch of other microphones. Then there's a switch to place the microphone in the center of the cab, or not the cab, but the speaker cone, kind of more in the middle, and then on the edge of the speaker cone. And on the left side, you see this rotating switch for different cabinets. There's a lot of kind of classics built in. There's the jazz chorus cabinet, there's the deluxe reverb, there's a bass 4x10 cab available. This is the Vox 2x12. I just forgot what this is. There's the Marshall kind of 1960s cab. There's a cab with a greenbacks, and I think this is probably the Mesa 4x12 with the vintage 30s in it. If you're going to use the power amp section of the pedal, there's switch to go from EL34s to 6v6s and EL84s, which is really cool. Then there's also controls for the kind of master volume. You can add presence, and you can also drive the power section, which is really cool. We'll try that out. On the left side, there's the DI output. On the top side, there's the input for your guitar or pedals or however you connect it. Then there's the -10+4 dB level switch. And this is really cool. You can actually connect, or you can go from your amp's kind of speaker output into the device. And by going here, you'll adjust the level. And with the through connection, you can go to your cab, and from here you can go to, let's say, a recording interface. So that's really cool. There's a switch for that, and there's an output that can be used either in kind of mono, or you can actually use this with headphones as well and have cab simulated sounds. And then there's the USB connection and the kind of power adapter thing going on. The unit itself is just really solid, pun intended. It feels super high quality, everything feels sturdy. I like the soft switches, all of these feel really firm, and there's nothing like cheap about it in a way. It doesn't feel cheap. It's actually not that cheap either. It's about 199 euros at the moment as of shooting this video. I was super impressed with the packaging. If you watched my live stream where I unboxed this, let's see if I can get this out. Yeah, as I said, I was super impressed with the boxing and everything. These look good. Let's put it on this camera, I think. Like, just everything is well made. As a graphic designer, I also appreciate that the manual is really well done. They charge you a bit more than you probably are used to for a Chinese pedal, but I think the way the whole unit and everything is built, I think they kind of justify that. So good job, guys. The only kind of complaint I have about the whole unit is that it doesn't ship with either the power cable or power adapter or the USB cable. As of shooting this video, they are still developing the kind of Solid Studio app or software to be used on your computer, and from there you'll be able to import your own impulse responses and all that kind of stuff. let's talk about all the ways you can kind of connect the Solid Studio into your guitar rig. One of the kind of, I guess, more traditional ones would be using the pedal board. And this is my pedal board right now. It's the Calan Pure Sky Overdrive and the Rev G3 distortion pedal. And from there I go to the Solid Studio input, and I'm using both of the output jacks. One goes through to the front end of the Uralton Junior, and the amp is normally plugged in into a cabinet. And the other output goes to my recording interface, and that's about it. So basically you would use your amp as a monitor in a gig situation at least, and you could send the line out or the DI output signal to the front of house. Unfortunately, I'm kind of running out of mic inputs on my Universal Audio Apollo Twin, which, as the name suggests, only has two. So we're going to use the room microphone here to listen to the amp, how it sounds in the room. And I can put pedals on it. So basic stuff. The signal just goes through the Solid Studio, and that's about it. Now let's take a listen on what's actually happening through the Solid Studio. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to disable the amp so I can hear what's happening through this device with my monitor speakers, and it doesn't mix in with the cap sound. Here's the Solid Studio. Actually, this is just the DI signal going into the audio interface. And we'll engage the power amp section. It's on EL34s right now. The master is at unity gain, and also the presence is at 0 or kind of unity as well. So that's the power amp sound, and now let's engage the cap sound as well. And we are using the SM57, and the Jazz Chorus cab sounds like this. Let's try increasing the drive for the power amp section. And let's browse through the 6v6s. EL84s. So you can add some power amp saturation if you want to. Let's back this down to kind of unity. Six V6s. Like that. And I think we'll try, let's stick with the EL34s and try putting an overdrive in front of this setup. So the Calan Pure Sky is kind of a preamp, if you will. Sounds pretty good, and let's just go through all of the caps quickly. This is the bass cab. sounds good. I think this is the AC30 cab, 2x12. Then we'll go to the Fender Twin Reverb. The Marshall 1960 cab. The Greenback 4x12. And the Vintage 34x12. So as you can hear, there's a zillion tone shaping options just by using a different cab. And these built-in impulse responses sound good, to me at least. And there's a bunch of different options if you pair this with different kinds of pedals and stuff. There's a huge kind of tonal, I don't know, candy store available for you. Let's stick with this cab since we're here. Let's quickly check out the presence control. It works. And let's quickly browse through the microphones. We'll start with the Dynamic 421. I'm gonna jump to the 421 because I just seem to like it a lot. Yeah, I like this. It has a lot of bite and let's check out the mic position control as well. Yeah, so as you can see and hear, there's so many options to kind of fine-tune your tone. At first, I have to admit, when I saw the pedal, I was thinking about like, so how this is going to compare to something like well, Torpedo Live is a different thing because it can load down your amplifier, but let's say the Moore Radar or something similar like that. This, I think, kind of offers you the same flexibility, but in a bit different way, in the sense that you can shape the tone by choosing a cab. Obviously, once they get the software ready, you can load these with your own impulse responses as well if you want to. You can choose the power amp, you can position the microphone, and there's a bunch of microphone options. Plus, you can drive the power amp simulation, and you can adjust the presence as well without any need for any kind of digital interface. You can do so much with just this, and this is how I love my kind of digital gear. I want to have kind of physical tools. I don't really care like what's happening underneath, in the sense it's obviously digital inside, but the controls and all of this is a really fun approach. And I think I would be able to use this unit even without like uploading any of my own impulse responses. This sounds really good. Let's just, for the sake of it, try the rev pedal as well, and we'll probably end up changing the microphones and all of that after that. We'll see. Maybe these smaller caps aren't made for this pedal. Actually, that's a fun sound. I think you get the point with this. So obviously you don't need to go with the through output into your amp. You can just have a kind of purely pedal board based setup where you have your pedals, and then at the end of the whole thing you'll go to the Solid Studio, and from there you go to your recording interface or to the front of house. It sounds good, it feels pretty good to play as well. I'm impressed. If your amp or your power amp happens to have the line out, you can actually plug in there, and from there you can go to the input of the Solid Studio and then apply power amp simulation and the cap simulation. When you're doing this, please be extra super careful and make sure whether your amp needs to be plugged in to a speaker as well while doing that. The Uraltone Junior over here doesn't need to be. You can just use the line out and it will handle the load, which is kind of cool. One of the kind of more unique ways you can connect the Solid Studio is by going from your amp's speaker output into the input of the Solid Studio, like that. And right now you also need to make sure that you have the speaker output selected and go +4 decibels on the level connections. And using the through connection, you need to go back to your cabinet like this. The cabinet is on the other side, but I'll plug it in from here like that. And please, please, please make sure that when you are connecting it like this, you are using the speaker cable both coming from the amp and going back with the through connection to your cabinet. These both need to be speaker cables, otherwise you'll risk breaking your amp. Running the Solid Studio like this allows you to use almost any non-effects loop amp with it. And it's pretty clever because you can still kind of retain your standard setup. You can use the cabinet for monitoring and it works normally. That was the room mic sound. And if you're a gigging musician, you'll appreciate the fact that you can still send like a microphone and cabinet emulated signal to the front of house, and you don't have to worry about knocking down the microphone in front of the cap or anything like that. That's super cool. I love that they thought about this way of connecting stuff. Just when you use this setup, please triple, quadruple check that everything's plugged in correctly, and remember to use speaker cables from the amp and back to the cabinet so you don't break anything. Also, you don't really need to use the power amp simulation because we're going from the power amp of the amplifier into it, so it would be kind of stacking two power amps. You can try it, it might be fun for you, but that's kind of not the idea if you want to have the amp sound, but just the microphone and cap sim going on over here. And just for the sake of it, let's compare what we're getting through the microphone over here, aka the room sound from the amp, and what we're getting in the recording interface. This is still the dynamic 421 and vintage 30 loaded 4x12. The last feature on the Solid Studio I'm going to show you is the ability to actually capture gap sounds or like impulse responses. And you go to the mode by holding these two buttons and plugging in the power supply. And when you're kind of in the cabinet capture mode, these lights will blink like this. The wiring setup is slightly complicated to explain. I'll just show it to you on the screen right now. And while you're looking at it, I need to mention that the Uralton Junior doesn't have an effects loop. So I'm going from the Solid Studios out into the front end of the amp just to try out whether it works like this as well. And what you're not seeing in either of the shots is that I'm miking the 1x12 cabinet with a Shure SM58, and how the presets on the Solid Studio work is that the kind of cabinet, or sorry, the microphone selector and the cabinet selector both, and actually these two switches as well, work as kind of preset places. So if you rotate one of these, all of these can be presets. If you rotate it like this, these can be different, whatever, 7, 6, 8 presets. And basically, I think they say you can store up to 190 something presets, which is really cool. So if there's a one microphone, for example, that you just never use, make that kind of a preset bay for all of your custom impulse responses you either create yourself or just upload on the device. Really cool. So I've hooked up this whole crazy setup, and we'll see what happens when I hit this button, which is supposed to start the cap capture thing. I think it might be done. I think I've done everything right. Let's hook up or rewire all of this, because I cannot, as of this, I cannot kind of record anything properly. So let me rewire everything and we can do the comparison between the microphone sound over here and what I think I managed to store over here. Be right back. Alright, maybe this was a slightly bad way to demonstrate the impulse response capture feature, just because this amp doesn't have the effects loop, and the tone controls of the front end of the amp affect the overall result. The sounds are still similar, which surprises me. It's like the captured cap response thing lacks most of the low end and stuff like that, but it's still in really same ballpark, which kind of impresses me. So I think I need to do a follow-up video where I actually get an amp with an effects loop and do the whole cabinet capturing thing properly. Thanks for watching my demo on the NUX Solid Studio, the impulse response power amp simulator thing. Overall, it's a really impressive unit. It's super well built. I love the layout. There's a bunch of connectivity options. Even the packaging gives you kind of a, let's say, premium feel, I guess. Built-in stuff sounds good. Both the cabinets and the microphones. I love the fact that you can actually like add power amp drive if you wish to do so. I love the fact that the kind of insides are digital, but there's physical controls for everything. Somehow it just suits me better than having a screen that I need to adjust. I think the only kind of downsides I can think of are the fact that it doesn't ship with either the power supply or the USB cable. I think they should include at least the USB cable. Pretty much everyone who uses these kind of devices probably has some sort of power supply, so that's not as huge issue. But trying to find kind of these micro USB cables, some people have them, some don't have. So I think that should be included. Overall, I think it's a great unit for the money, and personally, I would prefer this over something like the Moorada, or I think there's a couple of other similar pedals as well available, or like small boxes that do the stuff. Obviously, it doesn't load down your amp or anything like that, but you have different devices for that. And for gigging musicians, something like this is super cool because, as I mentioned in the demo, you can still use your amp for monitoring and get the kind of proper feel and all of that. And just put this at some part of your kind of signal chain, and you don't have to worry about miking the amp. Just send the signal to the front of house, and those people will be happy as well because there isn't like anything else bleeding into the microphone from the stage or anything like that. Super cool. If you want to get your own NUX Solid Studio, please follow link down in the description. You can also get t-shirts if you want to support what I do by following the link down below as well. And if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please leave a comment, hit the like button as well. That would help a lot. There's a subscribe button for you if you haven't subscribed yet. Hit the notification bell as well. And there's a bunch of other stuff I've done. Please check out those videos as well. Thanks for watching the video, and I shall see you next time.